Heavy metal rock.
Myglobalmind.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
I don't know if you probably don't remember this, but about maybe 8 years ago, I think it was 2014, right after Black Star Riders came out with the first record, which all those records are great that you were in.
Thank you.
We got set up for coverage of the band, so we went down to Birmingham. I'm in Huntsville, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Of course.
Of course, and I went down there with my wife to see the show, and she'd never seen Black Star Riders or Thin Lizzy, none of that. Obviously she knew some of the classics, but I told her we got to go check Black Star Riders. They're a great band, and what a great show you guys put on that night. And
thanks, man. That's awesome.
You guys were great, and we actually met after the show. You probably don't remember this because you meet a lot of people, I'm sure through the years. We spoke for a few minutes, and then we spoke to Ricky Warwick, who's great guy as well. And we talked for a little bit. It was at Workplate Theater. I don't know if you remember that venue.
Oh, listen, man, I totally remember the gig. And I'm sure, man, anyone that I ran into that night that wanted to talk about the band, I was thrilled about that because I was just so proud for the band to come through Birmingham. I mean, it was so random, and I love those guys and I love those songs. And at that point, 2014, man, I mean, I really believe like, hey, this thing's gonna sprout legs and we're gonna grow this, and it's gonna be, we'll have 2 buses one day.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely proud of those records, and it's I appreciate you framing that description the way you did, because maybe I have a vague recollection of us talking, but man, 2014, that was 9 years ago, bro.
9 years ago. Exactly. And I remember, just things that we've been doing this stuff a long time. We've been promoting and working with bands for a long time, since 2008. And you've always been super kind and nice to do interviews with us through the years. So we always appreciate your time. But where I was going with this is everybody that knows you and, members of the band, Ricky, everybody was involved, always been super gracious with giving us time and super supportive. So I wanted to start off like that, not necessarily because you're going to remember. No, you meet a lot of people, but I always remember that it's not every day that you get to see the bands backstage after the show and just chat and kind of hang out. And just, I appreciated that. So.
All right on, brother. Well, listen, congrats to you and everything that you're doing, because I see Myglobalmind, like it comes through my news feed from time to time, in various things. So look, I appreciate you right now, especially talking about what's happening. And I mean, if you're in Huntsville, you probably know we're there next weekend, and I'm super stoked to play that venue. I've never played Mars Music Hall, and I've heard great stuff about it. And Huntsville's almost a hometown show for exactly. Brother Kane.
Well, that's perfect lead into let's start talking about it. Brother Kane, right? Your first band from the 90s. Used to be called Chyld, right? And the name got changed to Brother Kane.
Yeah.
Announcement was made a couple months ago that you're going on the road, full tour, 30th anniversary tour, right? So let's talk about that. How did that come about?
I guess 2022, I had, maybe it was even the year before that. Right after the pandemic, everything was still fuzzy, the timeline. But right after I had started filling in Lynyrd Skynyrd, their management had me and my trio, Damon Johnson and the Get Ready, we were out opening some shows for Skynyrd, because what that did is it put me on site, whether Gary Rosington was there. If he felt healthy enough to play, he would play. If he didn't, I would play. They weren't really sure what was going to happen. I appreciated the honor for them to ask me to fill in, but I also appreciated them saying, "Hey, why don't we put your band on the bill?" I was thrilled. I was thrilled. So we were the first of 3 acts. Every night we would play. Then I would run up to the merch booth for a little while and shake some hands. People would buy my new CD or a shirt, you know, and we'd take a picture, whatever. Well, my manager was with me for a couple of those shows, and he was overhearing all the chatter from these fans. Every one of them, or certainly the majority of them, they wanted to talk about Brother Kane. It was more like, I love Brother Kane. I love those songs. I listen to those records to this day. You know, maybe there were a couple guys like, man, don't forget about that band. We, you know, that sort of stuff. So that following week, my manager Kevin and I went to lunch, and he brought it up, and you know, we'd never had a conversation about Brother Kane. He knew I was in the band. We had already been working together a couple of years, but I was focused on my solo stuff. That was it. So when he brought it up, I just said, look, I love those songs. I've always, you know, I keep in touch with the guys. You know, there's a lot of love and respect there. And I said, but it would be impossible to get the original band back together. You know, and, you know, full disclosure, bro, you know, it's not like Brother Kane was playing arenas in the 90s. You know, we were doing our thing, and we had a great run, but, you know, we were playing small rooms, and we were always cool with that. But I just knew if we ever did anything else again, that would be what it would be. And you can understand that's why I had been so focused on my solo stuff. Like, well, I want to grow this. Let's put my effort and time into this. So when Kevin said, hey, man, look, those were your songs. You wrote those songs. You sang them. You put the band together. It's not like Brother Kane had started in high school and you guys had come up through the ranks together. You put that band together when you had a record deal. And, you know, I guess when he put it that way, I was like, all right, well, if we're going to do any Brother Kane, I'd love to have my guys that I've been playing with now be a part of that. So the real kickoff was when I had a conversation with the one original guy that I'm so thrilled is a part of this, and that's Glenn Maxey on bass. Glenn was the bass player in Chyld when we were showcasing for the labels, and he was with me the entire kind of growth process of trying to find a singer, and then I started singing, and you know, we changed the name and all that stuff. So just really special to reconnect with Glenn after all these years. And I think his enthusiasm about the idea is what really kind of kicked everything into high gear for me. I was really feeding off of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. Glenn is the one original member that'll be on tour with you. Now, he'd been out of the industry for a number of years, right? Out of the music industry completely, right?
Long time. Glenn left Brother Kane, I guess it was sometime in '94. And he just, you know, man, he got a straight job and he raised his kids. And I've always had a lot of respect for that. And, you know, we sort of kept in touch, but it really wasn't until, you know, again, man, the pandemic, we had started, you know, you call your friends, hey, man, how you doing? How's everything going? Your family, how's your health? That kind of stuff. So I think his mind was blown, to tell you the truth, when I called him that day. I kind of knew it would be. I just said, hey, man, you need to sit down for this one. I got to ask you a question.
That's great. I'm glad that you're making this happen. Now, in terms of let's kind of get into some of the music, right? Different generation of music fans, right? We're 2023, mid 90s, early 90s was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And saying that the music scene was a lot different then, right? You had the whole grunge deal and a lot of those bands that came through that era. Some of the transition bands from the 80s weren't as popular anymore, unfortunately. There's a lot happening in the early 90s. So I'm curious just to kind of go into your mind as to, a young man growing up, obviously your influences are a lot. And if, I went back and listened to some of the three albums, and there's a lot of stuff there to digest. Brother Kane stuff. I mean, it's southern rock, there's hard rock, classic rock. There's the grunge, a little bit of grunge in it, but there's so much stuff in there that I think, my opinion, not having been a fan in the 90s because I was just a kid, but I listened to a lot of music for a long time. And I think there's some affinity there for some of those fans then. The band left some kind of an impact. That this is one of the reasons why we go back to their requesting the band to come back and play, is because your sound was unique. It was a little different than some of what you expected from that era, I think, right?
Yeah, I really appreciate how you just kind of packaged all of that you just said. Um, the music was really all that mattered to us. And, certainly now that is nothing but a positive. At the time, who knows what would have happened had we been thinking more about our image, or, what other bands we needed to align ourselves with. The first record definitely kind of set the tone, because it did show a lot more of my southern rock influences. Being a rock band from Alabama, how many rock bands have there been? Certainly in 1992, when we were recording that record. I mean, you've got a lot of great bands since then. The Drive-By Truckers I love, and there's a lot of great solo artists. But as far as like big guitars and soloing and anthemic courses, I don't know, we might have been it from the state of Alabama at that time. But we were proud of where we were from, kind of shameless in our classic rock influences, man. One thing that we didn't have in our musicality, or I certainly didn't, and I wish I had, and that's punk music. Punk rock was such the foundation for everything that happened, from the time Nevermind came out in 92, all those bands over the next 6-7 years, they were all rooted in punk music, man. And, kid growing up in a small town in Alabama that I basically only had pop radio, and, the albums that my friends would turn me on to, it was all straight ahead classic rock. Aerosmith, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, Zeppelin, Boston, Skynyrd, Thin Lizzy, Ted Nugent. That was our life. That's all we listened to. Who knows what would have happened if I'd have been listening to The Clash more and more to the Ramones. Those two bands especially, man, was so pivotal, and the sound of those bands that came after that. So, with the big wave of success of certainly the Seattle bands, Smashing Pumpkins, Stone Temple Pilots down in San Diego, they kind of established this new thing called alternative radio. And we never were a part of that. We were so kind of, our sound had been imprinted in people's minds, Got No Shame, Hard Act to Follow, That Don't Satisfy Me, way more sounded like the Black Crowes than it sounded like Soundgarden. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, it was a challenge for us to build an audience, to find an audience and build an audience. It was always a thrill for us to get to go out and, we opened for Lynyrd Skynyrd, we opened for Robert Plant, we opened for Aerosmith. Who's going to turn that down? No way. Yes, we're doing that. That's amazing. Let's go. Well, in hindsight, those bands' audiences were older. They were not going to see Pearl Jam. and they were not going to see, the Pixies, who oh God, I love the Pixies so much, man. I wish I'd have been a little more up on them back then. But that's kind of a long-winded response to what you said. It's like there is a lot of diversity over our 3 records, and you can't pigeonhole us. There's a little bit of everything in there, and credit to those fans, because I mean, Brother Kane, there may not be a lot of them, but Brother Kane fans are about as diehard as any fan I've ever come across. So it's really those people that we're the most looking forward to seeing and performing for them. And maybe they bring their friends, they bring their kids. Like, hey, you got, I love this band. The music is kind of timeless. It's held up pretty well. It doesn't sound dated. There's not some weird keyboard sound that makes it sound like the 80s, or that clicky bass drum sound that some of the bands had, late 90s and stuff, where you hear 6 or 8 measures, you're like, oh yeah, this had to be 1998. You can't do that with us.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things I was going to say, is that when you listen to through the 3 records, obviously you hear your guitar playing. The sound is just loud. Like you just hear it, and but it's uniquely different, and that's one of the things that when I went back and started listening to those records, those albums again, and you listen to that era of bands, you were doing your own thing. And I think fans appreciate that. And that's why they'll come back and they keep on asking about it. Let's go on the road. I want to hear this music again. It's been a long time, but like you said, it's held up. So that you must have been doing something right if they still remember that.
Yeah, man. Credit to the songs. Credit to the songs. And as you even touched on earlier, we were very lucky. We were with a big label. Virgin Records was a major record company. They had a huge radio promotional staff. And we did have challenges at that label, kind of in the hierarchy. But for the people that were working songs at rock radio, they were overjoyed for Brother Kane, because we were center cut. It was hard for them to get some of their other acts played on the Eagle in Dallas, Texas. But they would walk in with No Shame or Full Shine On, and the guy's like, wow, this is a no-brainer. Yes, we're playing this. That's perfect for my listeners. Because there were those kind of mainstream rock stations that were playing the new music, but they'd also play the new AC/DC. They'd play the new Van Halen. And Brother Kane was the perfect fit for that.
Yeah, and I hate to pigeonhole comparisons. I don't like doing that, because again, I think you had your own sound, but there's so much stuff there. Like you can hear the Southern rock stuff, and then I hear Tesla or Badlands or something like that. It's like all these different bands that, and I go back to again that era. There was so much good music that didn't get appreciated because of unfortunate grunge was taking over mainstream, radio and TV. There are so many great bands that were still making good music, and I think for your band as well. I mean, yes, you had some, like you were saying, some level of success, but it probably could have been more, I think, if the music scene was a little different. But my opinion, anyways. I don't know how you feel about that.
Oh no, I agree 100%. And I think both those bands you just mentioned, Tesla and Badlands, there's no doubt, man. We were definitely adjacent to that. I've become friends with all the Tesla guys over, since then. I didn't know them until later, but they certainly, their ears perked up when I said, "Hey, I'm Damon from Brother Kane." They're like, "Oh, we love Brother Kane," and I was like, "Well, damn, I wish we'd have known that in the '90s."
Right.
Because we could have, that would have been a great package, man. Tesla and Brother Kane. Yeah, again, it's just the music that motivates me to pick up my acoustic or my electric and write a riff or work on a vocal melody or whatever. It's just those records from my youth, man. I'm always listening to new music and looking for stuff. And yeah, sometimes something will jump out and hit me. but you know, I still get just as excited about, you know, a Humble Pie record, a Muddy Waters record, his electric record he made with Johnny Winter. That's one of the greatest records of all time, man. You know, it's hard for me not to feel inspiration when, you know, my wife is playing it upstairs and I'll hear that beat, and some little thing will pop in my head. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go downstairs a minute. I'll be back in an hour, you know. And then I'd come, you know, and it's been that way my whole life, man. So I have no regrets or no embarrassment about any of my influences. I really believe I was really lucky that my influences were what they were. You know, no disrespect to anybody, you know, any band, you know, there's guys that love, you know, 80s new wave synth stuff, killer, you know, awesome. And those guys have come up with good stuff from that inspiration. But it's kind of hard to argue with the classics, you know, Zeppelin, AC/DC. I love it.
It's you know, music is cyclical, right? It goes through cycles. You get influenced by different things. I mean, that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that. I think you become, I mean, personally, I think you become a better musician that way, but that's my opinion on that.
Amen.
I
Amen.
was going to ask you right quick about Glenn Maxey. How did it, going back, since he was out of the scene for a number of years, and then he, you know, he's coming back now with Brother Kane. How did it? What was the chemistry like after so many years?
Well, the chemistry was great simply because we had had so many beautiful, you know, beautiful conversations rooted in friendship and kind of getting, it's sort of like we got to know each other all over again, just talking on the phone. You know, when everybody was stuck at home and couldn't tour, my man, it was mandatory for me. I had to get out and walk. I had like this 3 mile path that I would walk, and I would, you know, I could check my email on my phone. I could call my family, you know, my extended family, or I could call friends. And that's what I was doing with Glenn. So on those walks, we'd just be talking. And, you know, both of his parents had sadly passed away the year before. And, you know, it's tough for anybody, man. So we really bonded in that. And I just tried to listen. And then I had gone through some stuff and he was listening. And I don't know, man, it was more about our friendship than anything else. And I mean, I've played with so many world-class musicians since Glenn and I were in Brother Kane together 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of those musicians, you know, and but man, nobody plays the bass on Hard Act to Follow like Glenn Maxey. and I had to remind him of that. You know, I can't deny that he had a little bit of, the word is not insecurity, but there was a little uncertainty. He had been playing a little bit. He'd been playing bass with this really talented singer-songwriter from down around Huntsville. So, you know, he was kind of getting back in it, and, you know, he had his sound together. He had bought a new bass and his equipment was all happening. But you know, I just said to him, look, man, we got plenty of time. We can work on this. So just, it's been really beautiful, man, to see him put in the time. I mean, he's been training. He's been like LeBron James, you know, in the playoffs. You know, he's the first guy there. He's the last one to leave. He's doing it, man. So and I just fuel off of that. That just, it makes me just work that much harder, man. And the fans are going to benefit from that. They're going to see that, man, when we roll in. Just because we haven't been doing this for a long time, we have just as much passion and certainly commitment to being as good as we can possibly be right now as we did back then. So, you know, we're ready. We're definitely ready. And, you know, as the tour goes on, we're just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. So I'm looking forward to that as much as anybody.
Absolutely, and that leads me to one of the couple of the questions I had in terms of, you mentioned that you've been around a minute. I mean, the amount of experience that you have now, you've been in the industry, you play with great players, you're a great player yourself. Uh, Now you bring, this band from your band from 30 years ago, and you're infusing all that experience, and you bring back the original basis and all this stuff. I think fans are gonna like that.
Well, I think you're right, brother. I think you're right. And, I really appreciate all the things that we're talking about. There's a lot of thoughtful questions that you have asked. And, I think back to the last 20 years since the band broke up and, working with Alice Cooper, Thin Lizzy, John Wade, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Black Star Riders, all amazing bands, all amazing experiences. The thing that became difficult is some of those bands were so big that, man, we'd just be gone so much. We'd be on the road all the time. And, I'm a father of five. Three of my kids are functioning adults, but I still got two teenage kids at home. And, definitely over the last 5 or 6 years, man, I've been so fulfilled just doing my own thing, having more control over my calendar, home with my wife and kids more, getting to drive them to school and pick them up every day, and just have that investment, man, because that's a finite amount of time. And I just feel like right now I'm living my best life, brother, and I'm so grateful for it. I've got that balance between my music, my work, and my family, and I can just tell it in how they feel about it. They love having me here as much as possible. They also love to support me continuing to follow my bliss. So I could not have predicted all of this to be happening. Again, credit to my manager Kevin, because he just got on board. He wanted to help me with my solo stuff, and that was it. He didn't see Lynyrd Skynyrd coming. We didn't see Brother Kane coming. There was none of that. So it's just a good team around me right now. The band, I mean, Brother Kane 2023 is the same as Brother Kane 1993 in that I was in a band with my friends. Some of them were my new friends, but we still became friends. And we spent enough time together back then when we started that we got to know each other like, okay, yeah, this guy's cool. Let's do this. Now, Buck Johnson, Jared Pope, Tony Higbee, I've made so much music with those guys, certainly over the last 10 years, that it feels very familiar in that respect, to just be making music with your friends.
Absolutely. And you've spoke about that before in previous interviews you've done with us. You did brought up the fact, obviously, I mean, it's hard for a musician touring on the road, especially if you got family and young kids. That's one of the things you said. I mean, you with Black Star Riders, you guys were on the road for 5-6 weeks, and probably longer than that at a time, overseas. A lot of the times, because that's where a lot of the Thing Lizzy was obviously huge over there.
Yeah.
They love Black Star Riders when they came out, because we cover the scene over there as well in the UK and Europe. And that was one of the things you said. I mean, I have young kids. I'm out on the road all the time. I'm missing, the chance of being a dad and all that stuff. And I can relate to that. I have 2 young kids as well, so I know exactly how that is. I mean, but it's funny because you go through that. It's like cycles again of the stuff, right? All those things kind of led you up to this path where you've been on, and you gotten so much great experience doing all these other great things with with Alice Cooper and Skynyrd, and playing with so many great musicians. But now you kind of circle back around to where it started, and I think that's pretty cool.
It's very cool, brother. And you just said something that made me kind of frame it really in a way that I've never said it before. It's such a blessing having kids, and that was a decision that I made, my wife and I made together. But it's like I never feel bad for talking so much about my family because, um, you know, it's easy for, you know, so many musician guys that they're always like, well, my wife knew what she was getting into when she married me because I'm a musician. Okay, well, yeah, but also you had to know what you were getting into yourself to decide to have kids. Yes, you are a musician and you tour, and that's how you make a living is you get on the road and you go play gigs. So, you know, how much are you going to be around? How much are you going to be invested in that? You know, if you're in a rock and roll band, like we started Brother Kane in 1993, big label, big management, big machine, everything's happening. You have to do it full time, full time. And we did. And, you know, there were some casualties from that. And I was paying attention, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, yeah, you know, shit happens. No, man, look, those were big decisions that sometimes were made very quickly by young men, you know,
Mhm.
not going, hang on a minute. Let's talk about this. Let's think about this. So um what there's all kind of cliches, man, about the youth and you know getting older and having perspective and all of that. But I say it again, man, I just so happy right now, man. I just feel like I'm living my best life, living my best life. And you know, I'm downstairs. This is my little office I'm talking to you in. So I've been, you know, working on the songs, singing the songs, getting my voice in shape, a lot of vocal exercises. And, you know, my family loves it. You know, it's like, don't bother dad. He's down there doing those, singing the,
Hey, they know it. They understand what you're doing. You're doing your business. It's all good.
yeah, we're doing our business. It feels good.
I was going to ask you about kind of, and without giving, I don't want you to give a set list away or anything like that. I know that there's a couple new songs that were recorded, right? So "Blinded by the Sun" and "Are You In There Anymore?" Those songs,
Yeah,
I'm guessing they'll probably get a play on the set list, probably.
100%, brother. I'm so excited about those new songs. Yeah, we're gonna play those probably every night. Because look, we want the fans to know that this is for real. You know, this is not just let's go out and play these songs from our youth and you know from the '90s and yeah, we're gonna do that, but we're also gonna be artists at the same time. I've been working very hard on improving as a songwriter and growing as a writer, getting more confident as a writer. So it just made sense that if we're gonna put Brother Kane back together and go out and play some shows, let's see what Damon Johnson, lyricist, has to say in 2023. You know, versus the guy that was writing songs, you know, 93 to 97. Um, I just think it's kind of fascinating. And, you know, it's exciting this week, brother, because those songs hit all the streaming platforms this Friday. So in less than shit, man, less than 48 hours, you know, they're going to be out there and people can hear them and they're going to dig them. Certainly our fan base is going to dig them. And then there'll be some people that didn't know about Brother Kane that are going to hear these new songs and go, hey, who is that? That's really cool. What is that? And then maybe they'll do a little research and dig back and they'll listen to Wishpool or listen to the debut record and find some other stuff. So I'm thrilled about that, man. We're gonna, you know, we've kind of learned more songs than we're gonna do in just one set. I'd like to be able to mix it up a little bit. Um, you know, it is going to depend a little bit on the strength of my voice. We're cramming a bunch of shows into a lot of nights in a row. So you know, depending on how that's going, uh, it'll dictate the set some. But man, you know, you can't. Brother Kane cannot show up and not play "Got No Shame" and "Fools Shine On."
Yep.
I lie in a bed I make. if I'm a fan and I go see Brother Kane and they don't play those songs, I'm gonna be pissed. So we'll be playing those every night.
That's great. Well, I mean, those are some of the bigger ones, right? So, but that's great. I can appreciate if I, from a fan's perspective, I can appreciate the new songs because, there are unfortunate, bands of the other era that, they go on tour, they haven't made a record in a really long time, and that's fine. That's the personal choice there. But I always say this, me personally, from covering bands for years and years and the stuff that we do, fans want to hear new stuff. I think from a fan's perspective, if you're a longtime fan of a band, you want to hear you owe it as a musician, I think, to provide new music because they supported you all this time. I think it's the least that they can do, show some appreciation, and the true fans appreciate new music, I think.
100%. I think of two artists that I myself am a huge fan of. One of those is Jason Isbell and his band, the 400 Unit, and the other is Clutch.
Yeah.
There are no two other bands or artists that I have listened to more in the last 10 years than those two. And I am overjoyed, when it hits my news feed or the Twitter or shit, man, I'm on the mailing list for both those acts. I get the emails. Hey, new record coming, this summer. I can't wait to hear the new record, man, from both those bands. So, I mean, yeah, it just reminds me, brother. I'm gonna have to keep writing. I mean, let's not just stop at 2 songs. Let's make a whole record. Let's paint a full picture of where our heads are at in 2023, 24 for sure.
And that was another question I was going to ask you. If hopefully everything goes well with the tour, and you build the chemistry, after each gig and all the stuff, you keep getting more inspired to create more music. I think the fans are going to appreciate it. If they follow the band for that long, since the '90s, and they're coming out to the shows to support what you have going now, and I think they would appreciate new music, and I hope it does happen.
Well, thank you, brother. I'm again overjoyed about these 2 songs coming out on Friday. Blinded by the Sun. That sounds like Brother Kane. That is a Brother Kane song if there ever was one. And just the people in my inner circle that I've played it for, they're like, yeah, like that's the band that wrote and recorded Got No Shame. That's the same. Sounds like the same guys. And then the other track, Are You In There Anymore, is one of my favorite lyrics I've ever written in my whole life. And your boy Ricky Warwick gets a little co-write on that because he and I had that title when we were writing for The Killer Instinct back around the time you saw us.
Okay. Yep.
Literally around that time period. Yeah, we had that line and kind of that vocal melody. I've just got a little recording of it, on my iPhone, and I've saved it, and I've been, I always listen through and I throw stuff in the trash, like, yeah, but I kept saving it, and I don't know why, but when I was working on this Brother Kane stuff, I just started connecting the dots, and as someone that knows Ricky, you'll appreciate, man. I sent him the track. I'd not said anything. I didn't say, hey man, I'm working on this, or hey, be looking for this. I didn't do any of that. It just dropped in his phone one day out of the blue, and he was in Europe. I knew he was out of the country. And about 5 minutes after I sent it, he calls me, international phone call. I said, hey buddy, this is an expensive call for you. And then that thick Belfast accent, he's like, listen, mate, you can't send me a killer song like that and expect me not to call you. He was like, what the fuck? He goes, who wrote those lyrics? I said, your boy wrote those lyrics. So it made me so happy for him to get that fired up about it.
That's great. No, that's awesome. That was another question I was going to ask you. So the whole BSR lineup was great, right? So Ricky's just a great songwriter. He's always has been. We back before BSR, he had his own stuff over there, and
Yeah.
I was happy that Black Star Riders got together, not only for him, but when you were in the band, some of the other, like Marco Mendoza and obviously Scott Gorham, who's a legend. It's like you go from that, and then your experience with in Lynyrd and with Alice Cooper. There's so many cool musicians that you've had a chance to play with. I mean, you had to have learned some valuable stuff from some of these guys, right? Like, you have some cool lessons and things that you've learned
Oh,
from
good
players.
Lord, brother. My God, yes. Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes. I mean, you know, without going way down the rabbit hole, because man, I could talk about those people for hours. You know, I mean, let's just start with Ricky. I mean, brother, I didn't see Ricky Warwick coming either. I just wanted to join Thin Lizzy. I just wanted to play those songs that are the fabric of my DNA. I just wanted to stand next to Scott Gorham. Brian Downey was on drums when I first joined. The legend, man. I mean, I was just so happy. I was just just blown away. I couldn't believe it was happening. And then, like 3 months into it, the chemistry was really good between all of us, and the band was on fire. And pretty quickly, there was this chatter about maybe writing some new songs. And Ricky came to me and just said, "Hey, mate, if this is going to happen, you and I are going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. We're going to have to get busy." And I said, "Bro, let's do it." He goes, "You got any ideas?" I said, "Oh, I got ideas." And this guy showed up day one with like 4 notebooks of lyrics. I'd never seen anything like it, ever, ever. And to just spend so many hours, with him working on songs and watching his process, man, it kind of changed me for the better. It made me a better writer. 100%. I got to give Ricky so much credit. Like you said, Scott Gorham, a legend, just a legend, and so gracious, man. There was no ego from him about me playing a bunch of solos or me doing a lot of the songwriting. He was almost a fan. He's like, "Hey, bro, I want to hear it. Let's go, bring it. Let's do it." So, Alice Cooper, also legend, timeless icon, really. And people still ask me, "Well, do you ever get stage fright?" Man, you spend one tour with Alice Cooper, you'll never have stage fright again as long as you live. He teaches all of us to be badass entertainers. He teaches you how to walk out there face first, shoulders back, guns blaring, yeah, it was like joining the circus playing with Alice Cooper. And just man, just what that's done for my confidence. And then you add Lynyrd Skynyrd into the mix on the back side of that with, again, songs that are in the fabric of my DNA, especially for me growing up in Alabama, the age that I am. Man, in the 70s, those were like gospel songs to us, especially the, Simple Man, Tuesday's Gone, Freebird, just, not to mention the guitar architecture of 3 guitar players and all those killer riffs. Yeah, man. So I just think that's the other thing that this Brother Kane thing is benefiting from, is I'm a much better band leader now than I was back then. I'm so much more confident. I got so fewer things in the way. There's no distractions, man. I'm not getting into trouble, staying up late, chasing girls. There's none of that, man. It's all about the music and putting on a great show and working hard for my friends. Jared Pope's my favorite drummer I've ever played with in my life. We've been friends now for 15 years. When that guy's back there laying it down and he's looking out at the crowd, he's got to look at my back most of the night. I want him to be like, that's my boy, and he's killing it. You know, I want all those guys to feel that. And they do. I don't take that for granted, man. I don't take any of that for granted. I learned all of that playing with Coop, Lizzy, Skynyrd. You know, man, it's just all a big part of the soup that has become whoever Damon Johnson is now. And what better outlet for me to show that than Brother Kane?
That's excellent. I look forward to that show coming up. But by the way, the venue you mentioned, Mars, I know Mars Music Hall, you haven't played there, but you know, I cover a bunch of shows there. It's a really good venue, you know, mid-sized venue, but you know, as you probably know, Huntsville's gotten, you know, there's just a big boom that's happened here over the last, you know, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
We've been blessed with a lot of really cool venues that have opened here. Like Mars is one of those, the Orion Amphitheater, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah, I can't wait to play that place, man. I've everything I've seen looks incredible. I
Yeah,
hope we get to play there somehow.
I hope so too. It's a great place, but you know, the acoustics there are pretty good at Mars, so I think you guys will like that. So I look forward to that show. Thank you for sharing that. Some of the stories.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ricky. He's got his own, the Almighty. That's another band that does. He's kind of kicking back into a couple of reunion tours over there in the UK. He's just a multi-talented dude. He's really super nice guy. So I was gonna
I
ask
agree, man.
your gear, because you mentioned this before. Your green Les Paul that you have, that you play a lot of the shows with. That's one of your classics, right? Your iconic guitars that you have. But you have a bunch of guitars too that you used. Previous interviews you've done with us, you mentioned an old Fender 52 reissue Telecaster that you've played. I don't know if it was studio or if you own it or not. I was just curious about some of the stuff that you have and that you're going to play on the tour, or that you still have. You know, just from fans' perspective.
Oh, right on, brother. Yeah, listen, that Telecaster I was talking about was a reissue. And I actually got that from Roman Glick, the original. See, when Glenn played bass on the first record, Roman was on guitar, like rhythm guitar. And then after Glenn left, Roman went back to the bass, which is his original instrument. So Roman had gotten that Telecaster that first tour, and it was the best Tele I'd ever played. It was all over that first record. And then I remember asking him, said, "Hey man, can you bring that to the second record? You know, because I want to, that thing sounds so good." And all the things that we did after that, he and I even did that Slave to the System project together. I just had a crush on that guitar. And sometime in the early 2000s, man, he called me and he said, "Hey man, let's do a trade." He goes, I don't play this thing. So I love that guitar, man. It's over here in my little rack. I haven't played it live really. I've been really, you know, mostly doing, you know, lately I haven't played it live. I did some way back, but you know, most of the stuff I'm playing now is the Les Paul. I'll bring my Explorer out from time to time. I've got my Carina Explorer is from 1983, and again, man, it's so crazy because I got that guitar because I loved Jeff Carlisi in 38 Special, and I loved Ricky Medlock in Blackfoot. See,
Okay.
so
There's
here it is, man. Here it is all these years later. I'm in Lynyrd Skynyrd with Ricky Medlock, and he's playing that Explorer that I saw him play in Blackfoot in 1981 at the Boutwell Auditorium in Birmingham, Alabama. Wow. It's just mind blowing, man. It's just mind blowing. But yeah, man, a lot of Les Pauls. That green one is so special. I think some people may think I love that guitar just because of the color. There's not, you don't see too many other ones in that candy apple green, but I'm just telling you, brother, it is the best Les Paul I own, and I have a dozen of them. I ordered that from the custom shop, and the guys over there, I guess they just took some extra love and care, and they picked out the best top, the best back. The neck is perfect. That thing weighs about it's less than 8 pounds. It's so light. It's super special, man. So that was going to be out with me. I don't know if you can see it in this light, but this is my other favorite.
Yep.
This is my other favorite right now, man. This is a 59 reissue that I bought from my buddy Reed here in Nashville. He buys a lot of guitars, and every time I'd go to his house, I'd always pick that one up. And he called one day. He's like, "Hey, man, I think I may want to part with that one." And I'm like, "You're out of your mind. Whatever you want for it, just tell me. I'll write you a check. Thank you very much." So, yeah, that one's special. And I guess the other special guitar, man, is the old wine red Les Paul Custom. It's called Gertrude. And I bought that guitar brand new, man, in 1980. It's a 79. I was in high school, saved my money bagging groceries, and bought that guitar. And it was all over the first 2 Brother Kane records, some of Wishpool. And it's just a part of the sound of that band. So for sure, man, I'll be playing that one too.
That's great insight. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's great, man. I look forward to that. I wanted to ask you right quick because you mentioned this before, and when we were interviewing you for your solo stuff, your solo work. You were asked the question about your songwriting and how it's progressed through the years, how you matured songwriter. And I'm going to quote from the actual interview that you did. You said you took a deep dive into some of the greats like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, David Bowie, Leonard Cohen to learn about their songwriting process. So take me kind of through that and how that influenced you, for your solo stuff and even for, some of the new Brother Kane stuff, from where you used to be, right at the beginning.
Wow, man, what a great question. Thank you. I think most of us as fans, and even guys like me that become musicians ourselves and start writing and all that, it's easy to put some of those people on such a pedestal that they are godlike. And almost to where you go, man, I could never write a song as good as Starman by Bowie, or as good as Girl from the North Country by Bob Dylan, or Blue by Joni Mitchell. I mean, these are iconic works by these just legacy artists. And sometime in the early 2000s, man, I just started studying in a way I'd never had. Because as you know, I was a guitar player. That was all the studying I did as a kid. And that's why when, Brother Kane hit the scene in the early 90s, people were talking about my guitar playing. With that didn't happen by accident, man. I had put in my 10,000 hours and had, but I'd never put in the 10,000 hours as a songwriter. So that's what I've done now, is I've put in that kind of time. Steve Earle, the great Texas Americana artist. I mentioned Jason Isbell earlier. I would read interviews with those guys, and they would talk about those artists that you just mentioned and what an influence they were. But you could tell there was a fearlessness in them. They weren't intimidated. They weren't. I mean, none of this is a competition. But I guess my point is, what's wrong with setting the bar as high as you possibly can? What's wrong with sitting down and go, you know what, man? I've been listening to Thunder Road and Badlands by Bruce Springsteen. I'm going to try and write a song like that. I've been listening to Damn the Torpedoes, the whole record by Tom Petty. What if I spent a week and tried to write some 3.5-minute pop songs in structure, but with some, tell a story, create some characters, talk about some challenges, talk about some painful experience, put it in that song. Chances are I might write something that I'm super proud of or super excited about. And then somebody else might hear it and go, hey, man, I love it. I love it. that's what has been happening with this solo stuff that you were talking about earlier. So, that's how a lyric like the new song, Are You In There Anymore? That's why I got that phone call from Ricky Warwick, because he could tell. He's like, my boy Damon Johnson has been working. He has been practicing. And, look, I still listen to all those people that you named, man. We had Joni Mitchell on shuffle this very morning, and I'll have that morning cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and I'm listening, man. What's she saying? What is Joni got to say today? What can I lift from Joni and take it down to my desk and belt something out, man? Yeah, listen. I would. I appreciate what you said about Battle Lessons and the record before that, Memoirs of an Uprising, brother. If I had those lyrics on the page in front of me right now, I could show you some lines and go, oh, that's straight off of, that got lifted from Highway 61 Revisited. I was listening to Bob Dylan and he said a line and I took that line and flipped it around and, because sometimes you just need 3 or 4 words to set you off onto a whole other path. And fuck, man, I get excited about that. I love that, man. It's, I guess it's, and I'm just happy to be at that place, because songwriting was not always like that. It used to be hard work. I used to kind of dread it, like, oh no, we got to write another record. What am I going to say?
Yeah.
I just wasn't in the right headspace, man. Listening to and studying those artists has changed me for the better. And I'm grateful for all of them, that they live the lives that they have and have done the work that they've done.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with challenging yourself that way, right? I mean, it's we talked about it before. Influences can come from anything, right? When you're a songwriter, coming from a non-songwriter person, it can be anything, right? It could be, personal stuff. It could be just something that just got stuck in your head, or it could be great bands of the past that, a lyric in a song can influence a whole song. I mean, it could be anything really, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way you challenge yourself and make yourself better. I think it's
man.
That's cool. That's cool to kind of get a little snippet of that.
Right
I
on.
saw something I was going to ask you about, and I'll be mindful of your time here, so we'll wrap it up here in a little bit. But I saw a post that you posted something on Facebook. It was a couple years ago on your Facebook, and you mentioned when Brother Kane, I think it was in '95 when you guys opened for Van Halen. If I'm mistaken the year, correct me if I'm wrong, but you posted a picture of you and Eddie Van Halen, and it was I think it was for a print magazine or a magazine feature that was happening, and you were kind of like the guitar prodigy asked questions to a guitar hero or a guitar legend, and you had a chance to do that and ask Edward Van Halen some questions, and I just can't imagine as much of an influence as he has been for a long time for a lot of guitar players. What was that moment like?
Something, brother, I think about that experience a lot because I don't ever want to forget that. I want to remember that because it was like it was just such a seminal moment. The good news is that Ed had, we did all together, man. I think we did 14 or 15 shows with Van Halen. So we'd already been around each other enough that he was comfortable with me. We had been, pleasant and, cracking jokes or whatever. So that day I sat down with him, he loved it. He's like, man, I'd way rather talk to you than some some journalist, that's trying to dig up some dirt or something. But yeah, man, I love Eddie so much, and I know exactly the post you're talking about, and sadly, that was right after he had passed away, and everybody was sharing their reflections and their memories and their inspirations rooted in Eddie. But I'll tell you this, man. I have backed it up on my computer. I have the cassette of the interview of us talking. And I guess, man, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna upload it to YouTube, you know, and just have it there for posterity, you know, just for historical archive. Like here's Eddie Van Halen talking to Damon Johnson, Shoreline Amphitheater. I think it's September 1995. Yeah. And I don't care that I sound like a geek in some of it, you know. I'm just saying. So, and then what happened? Ed, do you remember? I was like Chris Farley, you know, on Saturday Night Live when he was talking, you know, he's got Paul McCartney there. Chris is like, hey, Paul, you remember that time you were in the Beatles? That was cool. There was definitely a little of that, but I don't care, man. What an incredible experience, and I'm grateful to the people with that magazine that had that idea to do that. I've actually kept in touch with those people all these years. Lon Friend and Catherine Turman. The magazine was called Rip Magazine, and they were a cool transition between like the '80s magazines like Metal Edge, and then something heavier, you know, like Revolver or, you know, whatever. It was good. But yeah, man, Ed just took a shine to me. You know, he could tell I was working hard, and you know, I cherish those experiences. So grateful to have that time with him, and you know, it's never lost on me, you know, when one of my heroes pays me a compliment. I mean, I am 10 feet off the ground whenever that happens. My wife gives me a hard time. She says, Damon, your love language is definitely words of affirmation. You know, I said, okay. But, you know, you get those words of affirmation from Billy Gibbons, or you get them from, you know, Alice Cooper, Scott Gorham, Eddie Van Halen. I should be way more egotistical than I am, bro.
Well, listen, I do appreciate you telling a little more into the story, because you know, and it's not, you know, obviously Eddie was, you know, one of the best that's ever done it, but it's good to hear how much of you know, small things like that could impact. You know, one of your musical heroes says that's kind of a big deal. You know, that can change things for you, right? That's a confidence thing. You know, it could be so many different things, and you hear stuff like that, not just about Eddie, but other great guitar players or musicians, you know, throughout history. You know, I think Nuno from Extreme had a similar story. I think he was Beato was actually talking to him about this, and one of the guitar solos for the new Extreme album. He was Eddie Van Halen when he was still alive. He came to his place while he was recording that, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and that was one of
Wow.
his stories, that he actually never came in to hear that guitar solo on that specific song. And I don't remember the name of the song. It's one of the new songs. But you know, it's just interesting to me how many different ways that can impact somebody, and you can just kind of just run away with it after that, and that's just cool to hear that, you know.
Well, you know, man, we've all got our heroes, you know. I mean, I've read Bob Dylan talking about freaking out when he got to meet Johnny Cash. And they wound up, you know, Johnny recorded some of Bob's songs. And if Bob Dylan can get excited and be a fan, then we can all get excited and be a fan. Because Bob's the greatest of all time.
All right. Well, listen, I've enjoyed our chat. I mean, there's just so much that we packaged together, and I really think that for fans of Brother Kane, I think it's going to be great. That, you know, finally we got some concrete dates. It's an anniversary tour. You got Glenn back in the band, and you have your own guys that you're comfortable playing with. So I think overall, you've said it best yourself. That, you know, where you're at now, you know, so many years down the line, you have so much material behind you, and you've done so much now in the industry. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be a great show. I look forward
Well,
to it.
thank you. Thank you so much, brother. Listen, I really have enjoyed this interview as much as any that we've ever done. And you know, you asked some great questions, really thoughtful questions, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Well, no problem. And I look forward to the new songs coming out this Friday, right? The 2 new songs, right?
Yeah, when you wake up Friday morning, they will be sitting there on your Spotify and Apple Music and Deezer and Amazon and whatever. They'll be there, man. So just
And for
crank them
everybody
up.
watching on the channel, make sure you check out the Brother Kane tour dates. It's going through the end of October to the beginning of December.
That's
So
right.
get on the road, check the guys out. There's new music coming out. You don't want to miss that. So thank you, Damon. We appreciate your time, brother, and we look forward to seeing you on the road.
Thank you, brother. You too, man. Take care.
Have a good one.
All right. See you.
Heavy metal rock.
Global Mind.